Good morning and welcome to ABG Investor Day. Today we have 34 companies presenting on two live and two parallel tracks. And the presentation will also be available afterwards, both on YouTube and Introduce. During the day, we'll have a short lunch break between 12 and 12:30. And then the presentations will continue until 5:30 this afternoon. My name is Max Bacco, and I'm an equity research analyst here at ABG within industrials. And with that said, we will start off today with Nordic Waterproofing and CEO Martin Ellis. Martin, please go ahead with the presentation.
Thank you very much, Max. It's a pleasure to present Nordic Waterproofing Group to you. Thank you very much all for your interest, for dialing in. We are a producer and installer of building and infrastructure solutions. Moving on to the next page, I'm going to make a quick recap of our life over the last 10 years. We've been constituted 10 years ago by putting two pieces of similar businesses together, one from Trelleborg, non-strategic, and the other from Lemminkainen in Finland. And we created Nordic Waterproofing in that way in 2011 by merging. We made a few acquisitions in the years after that, but the key date is our IPO in 2016 on the Stockholm Nasdaq. And from then on, we increased the speed of our acquisition drives. We made a number of acquisitions in Finland, in Benelux, in 2017. In 2017 and 18, we created our prefab elements, wood-based prefab elements business in Denmark and Norway. In 2018, we entered the green infrastructure business with the acquisition of Vägdek in Sweden. Basically green roofs and green areas in urban environments. In 2019, another acquisition in Benelux, Ponds and Landscapes, again geared towards sustainable solutions, especially for individual homes. In 2020, we re-domiciled our parent from Denmark to Sweden. It's a sort of an administrative move, but didn't change our business model, of course, at all, but made it basically easier for our Swedish shareholders receiving dividends. And in 2021, we again accelerated our acquisition drive, which was a bit slower in 2020, by making 6 acquisitions so far this year. Moving on to the next page, I want to emphasize that our business case is built on sustainability. First of all, in our traditional legacy business of waterproofing, we make and install materials which are on the roof at least for 50 years. So that in itself obviously contributes to a lower environmental footprint. We also improve the CO2 balance with wood-based solutions. All of our prefab elements are made from wood. Wood, as you know, captures CO2 as opposed to traditional solutions using cement, which emits a large quantity of CO2. So we think that's an important contribution to reducing the global warming effect. We also promote biodiversity through the green infrastructure products. And last but not least, we have a solar panel installation business in Finland, which also contributes obviously to clean energy. Moving on to the next page. This gives you an illustration of basically where our products go on the building. On the left, you see a flat roof. That's the biggest part of the demand we are serving. And we install obviously waterproofing products, green infrastructure, we just mentioned, solar panels. So pretty much all different options on a flat roof we're able to provide. On the right, you see a pitched roof. And again, we provide a number of products there. You can also see the facade of the building, which is made of prefabricated elements. The advantage of these prefab elements, obviously, is that they are much faster to install on the job site. It's difficult to find workers on job sites, especially these days. So the speed of installation by prefabricating the whole functionality, the doors, the insulation, the windows, etc., makes it much faster on the job site. And that's a trend we've seen for a number of years, and we're confident it will continue and take market share in the future. Moving on to the next page, this describes our installation business. So the previous slide showed basically the products we are making ourselves as an industrial company. Here you see an illustration of what we install as an entrepreneur. So traditionally we are a subcontractor to the main contractor when we install our waterproofing material on roofs. Main contractors usually don't do that themselves. We have the prefab elements we just talked about. We also make flooring solutions on both buildings, parking lots, and ships. Green infrastructure we mentioned. We have metallic facades and eaves, a recent acquisition, and the solar panels we install ourselves. We also have a business where we clean roofs that started in Finland very successfully, and we've now copy-pasted it to Sweden. So we also in Sweden are able to clean and repair individual home roofs. Again, service in general is a growing business in the sense that people tend to subcontract more and more and insource a number of products and services regarding their homes. Moving on to the next page, we have a footprint which is centered, obviously for historic reasons, in the Nordics. So we have significant market share in the 4 Nordic countries, between 20 and 35% in our legacy business. But we also have plants in the UK, in Benelux, and in Poland. These are mostly linked to our EPDM synthetic rubber waterproofing material. The bitumen-based waterproofing material doesn't travel that far. So usually you serve around your plant about 500 kilometers. In the case of the synthetic rubber material, which is an alternative waterproofing solution, the material is more expensive and travels basically throughout Europe without any problem. So what we do is we send the material to Benelux, for example, and then we prefabricate the roof again. It's a solution where you can do with synthetic rubber, where you cover the entire roof in your plant and then ship the material and install it very quickly. In terms of our exposure to new build versus renovation, we're about 50-50. That gives us good stability. Renovation obviously is a very stable demand picture. New build can be a bit more cyclical, but basically in the last 10 years we haven't seen any dramatic cyclicality. We've seen a housing boom in Denmark 6 years ago, but all in all, the demand picture also in new build is quite stable in Scandinavia. Next slide shows you the contribution we make to sustainability. I've touched upon that. First of all, the long-lasting nature of our material in itself is a favorable factor in terms of sustainability. The second factor, which is not as well known, which is important, is that our material is basically keeping the insulation material dry. And insulation material is only functional as long as it's dry. If there's water leaks, if the insulation material becomes wet, it doesn't insulate anymore. So a very important factor. We also use a certain amount of bitumen, and bitumen basically is a material which is considered waste in the refinery. The refineries try to produce as little as possible of it, as opposed to gasoline and jet fuel, etc. So using that material in itself avoids putting it to waste, burning it, and our industry is the only one with the road builders who is able to use bitumen. The next item we talked about, we capture a lot of CO2 in the wood we use for construction, and basically CO2 remains in the building as long as it stands. So a much better solution than traditional materials. And the green vegetation surface I mentioned, those promote obviously a green look, but maybe more important, they help to absorb heavy rainfall. We've seen recently in Europe that that's a growing problem in cities especially. So our green vegetational surfaces help slow down the water introduction into the sewage system, so contribute to reducing flooding. Next slide shows the ESG aspect of our business. We've described the sustainable solutions drive. We also have emission reduction targets. We basically target zero CO2 emissions for scope 1, 2, and 3 at the latest in 2050. We also have a target of reducing scope 1 and 2 emissions to zero at the latest by 2030. We also use already today 100% recycled polyethylene in our carrier. The carrier is basically the plastic textile which we impregnate with bitumen and SBS to make our core products. So already now we use basically recycled plastic bottles in that important material. And we comply with a number of international regulations you can see here. One specific initiative we have in Denmark is a training program for roofers, basically for young people who have trouble finding a job, finding a profession. And that's been very successful. We also rank quite highly in best place to work surveys, which we participate in. So we are regularly pretty well positioned in the quality of our work environment. And that's really important for us. Next page, we show the strategy. As you probably know, we have a pretty active acquisition strategy. We've doubled our sales over the last 5 years since the IPO, and a lot of that is due to the acquisitions. The strategy there is to focus obviously on sustainable solutions. Almost all of our acquisitions have been centered on that. We also want to expand our product and service offering to our existing customers and basically be a bit of a one-stop shop when it makes sense. And the third aspect, again, is linked to our synthetic rubber material, where we have a downstream integration strategy, where we, as I mentioned, buy shops in different European countries, which are going to use our EPDM rolls and then prefabricate roofs to make a quick installation. In 21, we've made 6 acquisitions in waterproofing contracting, which is a business where we are present mainly in Finland and Denmark, but we've made 1 acquisition in Norway in that area. Ponds and landscaping, which use our synthetic rubber material in Holland. Prefab wood elements in Finland, urban green landscaping in Sweden, liquid floor coating in Finland, and pre-made eave systems in Finland. So 20 plus acquisitions since the IPO and basically doubled our turnover. Following slide gives you a more focused information about the first half of this year. What we see is, in spite of the COVID, and you're probably aware of that very well, demand remains strong. We have had strong input cost inflation, but we're able to pass it on to our customers. We might not indefinitely be able to do that. So if we see further input cost inflation accelerate again, we especially have a bit of a time lag in passing it on to our customers, so we might have a negative effect in the remaining part of the year. The main risk we see right now is delays in job site execution. What we see is that some materials are not being supplied. We have been able to supply our material throughout until now, but we see that some complementary product categories are in short supply, and we start to see significant impact of that, especially in Finland. So we see especially new build projects being delayed because some components are missing. We have created a Chief Sustainability Officer a few months ago, obviously illustrating our focus on sustainability, and we are going to continue to obviously to put a significant emphasis on that. And as we've shown, this is basically favorable for our business. We have made sort of above average number of acquisitions in the first half, and we're not sure that we're going to continue at that pace. The focus is to remain disciplined in the multiples we pay, and we're not ready to make acquisitions, obviously, just for the sake of it. Next page gives you some more figures about how we've performed. So I would say so far so good. We have had a very good performance again in the first half of the year after quite strong last year, 2020. So basically we are above our performance thresholds. If you look at the right side, we have ROCE at 16.8%. We have a threshold value which we want to always attain is 13%. So right now we're significantly above that. And our balance sheet remains very solid, so we are financially able, of course, to make additional acquisitions. Next page gives you a reminder of our financial targets. We want to grow faster than the market, and we've achieved that over the last years. We've been able to gain some market share especially in our legacy business. In terms of profitability, I mentioned we want to hit at least 30% in terms of ROCE. We've been able to do that. And the capital structure, we want to be close, but not above 3 times debt on EBITDA. Right now, we'll probably finish the year again below 1. So we have room to take on additional debt. Dividend policy, 50% of net profit at least, and historically we've been between 55 and 60% of distributed net profit, and we intend to continue that rule. Next page gives you a summary of why we believe Nordic Waterproofing can be an attractive investment. We have strong market positions in our core business. We usually have about 30%, 30 to 35% of the market. And that gives us a certain amount of pricing power. Usually we have 3 to 4 competitors at the most in our legacy business of waterproofing material. And historically we've been able to pass on cost increases to our customers. We have a very close relationship, especially with our contractor customers. We are a reliable partner. We give them top quality product. Our logistics and delivery speed is second to none, and that's really important for our customers. And we also help them with a number of legal, marketing, personnel issues they might have. We talk about relatively small companies, and they're happy to receive some support from us. So a very solid market position. Our solutions are sustainable. That's really critical, and I think will continue to give us an advantage in the future. We have low cyclical sensitivity, as I described in the beginning. Our balance sheet is strong, and we still have a relatively attractive yield in terms of the dividends we pay. So that is a short description of who we are, and I'm very much looking forward to your questions now.
Yes, thank you very much, Martin, for the presentation. And as you said, time for some questions. So first off, you have talked some of becoming more of a one-stop shop for your customers. Could you perhaps elaborate on what types of products and services you would like to add to your current offering?
Yeah, first of all, in terms of products, there's a number of examples, which is with this metal fixing, which are used in roofing. There's some details, specific products which go on pitched roofs, which we've added to our portfolio. In terms of services, maybe that's even more important. What we increasingly do is we have maintenance contracts with our customers. So basically, they can basically forget about their roof, and we take care of maintaining it and guaranteeing that it works for even more than 50 years. We also have a number of services for individual homeowners. I mentioned the cleaning roofs. We also have for individual homeowners the pond solutions we provide, where we basically promote swimming ponds, which are ponds where you don't need chlorine, which are basically self-sustaining with vegetation. We do that in Benelux, but we are ready to expand that geographically. So that's just a few examples. So you could argue it's bits and pieces. It's not huge pieces in our offering, but we're constantly on the lookout to add additional products and services there.
Okay, and as you mentioned during the presentation, you have finalized 6 acquisitions this year, which is quite a lot. But looking historically, M&A activity for you have been rather volatile, with a few years of high activity, followed by some low activity the following years. Would you say that this is a result of your end markets or internal strategy? And what should we expect going forward?
Yeah, now that's an interesting question. Actually, we've had one really slow year, that was 2020. During the other 5 years since the IPO, we've made a number of acquisitions every year. So that's really the norm. But as you know, multiples are relatively high, and we don't want to overpay. So that's obviously a challenge, and it explains why in 2020 we just made one acquisition. So we want to remain disciplined. We usually avoid auctions, and we focus on small to medium-sized targets, usually family-owned. And the trigger quite often is a generational shift, where the family wants to make sure the company has a future within a large organization. And that's obviously totally unpredictable. Either it happens or it doesn't. We don't have a big influence on that. So that explains why we have these waves. So it's an opportunistic strategy, but it means that we talk about cheaper multiples, and we talk about relatively easy to integrate companies because of a relatively low size.
Okay, and finally, what is your view on the technology development in your industry? Will bitumen products remain for a long time to come, or is progress being made on developing non-fossil-based alternatives?
Yeah, again, an interesting question. What we see is that there are competing materials to bitumen. Bitumen is still the dominant solution, but you have the synthetic rubber we produce ourselves. You have PVC, TPO. All of those are oil-based. So in that respect, there's no way around oil-based solutions. What we see is a stable situation now in terms of market share of these different materials. So we don't see bitumen reducing its market share. In some European countries, EPDM, the rubber is already quite dominant, and there's some market share gained by EPDM, but basically not in the Nordics. So we believe there's no way around bitumen from a technology point of view. It's the only affordable waterproof material. The same goes, by the way, for roads. It's very difficult to replace asphalt on roads as well. So we believe bitumen has a solid long-term future.
Okay, perfect. That was all from me, and I think we are running out of time as well. Thank you very much for joining us here today, Martin, and good luck going ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all listening in.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.